Black Frieza, the new and improved version of Frieza that is likely to take the future of Dragon Ball Super by storm. What is the future of Frieza's character, and what likely is his plan in terms of his future villainy in Dragon Ball Super? That's what I'm here to talk about today, and we actually have gotten quite a few hints in terms of what the future of Frieza's character is. So let's just jump straight into it. Now, when I was watching Dragon Ball Super Superhero, I noticed that Frieza did in fact have a set of Dragon Balls with him on his ship when they showed him for a few seconds in the film. And this got me thinking, is this a hint at future events? Is this a hint at what's going to be happening with Frieza in Dragon Ball Super? And, you know, I've seen multiple hints alluring to Frieza having some sort of future interaction with the Dragon Balls, and that's essentially what I'm going to be talking about today in my video. So you might ask yourself, well, Jordan, what are the other hints in terms of Frieza finally attaining and using the Dragon Balls himself after all this time? Well, there are actually quite a few hints. In the Namek Saga, Frieza, when he actually first shows up as a character, he actually is used as an exposition character in terms of expanding on how the Dragon Balls work within the series. And he actually says some very interesting things here. One of those things being that he was actually willing to go through the tests that the Namekians require of the people that they have to vet in order to use the Dragon Balls, but they refused to put him through said tests. And as a result, he just wiped them out because he was going to get the Dragon Balls no matter what. Now, this is interesting for a number of reasons, because as much as people love to characterize Frieza as this cold-hearted, vicious killer, the fact that he was willing to try and go through these tests or these trials speaks a lot to his character in terms of his ability to sort of control himself in certain situations. And when you think about Frieza controlling himself, well, there's one particular scene that comes to mind, and that is whenever Frieza showed up as Black Frieza in the Dragon Ball Super manga. Now, it's been a while since the Dragon Ball Super anime was running, so it's not very fresh in people's mind, but I actually think that if we go back and look at the Dragon Ball Super anime, there is an episode that pretty much encompasses the entire idea behind Frieza's character development and where he is heading as a character. Now, the episode that I'm referring to is the episode where Golden Frieza is resurrected and is fighting some of the assassins that's been sent to take out him and Goku, and that is a very, very important episode. It is episode 95 of Dragon Ball Super, and I've talked extensively about how Frieza has a lot in common with Sun Wukong himself in terms of his character development, but in this episode in particular, they really, really make it clear that that's what's going on here. This whole episode really pretty much encompasses a lot of the narrative themes of the Monkey King, and like I've explained in previous videos, there are other things that Frieza has went through that are very reminiscent to the very long and grueling process that the Monkey King had to go through in order to become an enlightened being. So, the first line I'd like to call attention to here is Frieza saying that he has spent what seemed like an eternity trapped in hell. Now, that immediately makes me think of the Monkey King being trapped underneath Five Phases Mountain. And then he goes on to explain that the only way that he was able to endure it was through acute mental focus, training himself to keep composure through the torturous, basically like the fairies and stuff, all the goodness that he was being surrounded with. He had to essentially train himself to deal with it, so that way he didn't feel the need to destroy everything around him. And that is very, very important in terms of Frieza's character development, because that's essentially his way of refraining from just wiping out things that he despises, like Goku. So there's some hidden symbolism in Frieza's hell that actually helped him in the long run and actually made him more mentally focused and capable of doing the things that are necessary for him to succeed in the series. And he even says himself that after exercising those muscles so intensely and for so long, that as part of him, he's discovered this new part of himself, which is even keeled composure, which essentially means that he can control himself in situations where he would normally feel bloodlust. He can sort of prevent himself from acting on his need to destroy his enemies if he needs to. But then on the other hand is the ultimate strength, which is essentially his iron fist as a ruler. And he calls this the true manifestation of Golden Frieza. Now, I've talked about in previous videos as well about how Black Frieza is essentially a representation of Frieza's balance or his enlightenment. He's essentially finding balance, just like Goku did on Namek, just like Sun Wukong does at the end of Journey to the West. Every character in the series essentially has their own balance that they achieve that is crafted towards their personality and their character traits. And Frieza essentially says when he achieves this perfect balance in his Golden Frieza form, that this is truly who he is in his purest form. So essentially, like, his ability to sort of keep his composure in certain situations and then act with maximum efficiency whenever the time is right is who he truly is in the purest form. And this is very, very, very important. Now, I know he says this in reference to Golden Frieza, but you can also, since Black Frieza wasn't a thing at the time, you can apply this as, you can think of Black Frieza as the next level of this concept, which is why, unlike here, where Golden Frieza actually tries to destroy Goku with destruction energy, he actually lets Goku live at the end of the Granola arc. So, there's been a lot of talk about Ultra Ego Vegeta being the one to wipe out Frieza with destruction energy, and this whole idea of Frieza manipulating destruction energy and, you know, being able to prevent his own destruction in certain cases may actually play a part in the interaction between Vegeta and Frieza in the future, and may actually serve as a motivator for Vegeta to essentially learn to not focus on revenge, but to think about nothing but destruction. And once he finally achieves that, he'll be able to create destruction energy powerful enough to actually wipe out Frieza. Just to make this clear, because a lot of people think that the intent to kill that Frieza had for Goku is gone in Black Frieza simply for the fact that he let him live, but that is not the case at all. Frieza says here that he has a very strong desire to kill Goku and that it will never go away. And later on, when Frieza is having a conversation with the gods about, you know, how he could possibly abandon his universe, like how he could possibly have no connections to Universe 7, Frieza says that he literally has no intent of preserving anything but himself, which reminds me a lot of the Monkey King attempting to preserve himself using Taoist immortality. And what's really interesting about Taoist immortality is that it's essentially manipulating fate and preventing your own destruction through certain acts, through essentially becoming a Buddha at will, to essentially steer fate in the direction that you need it to prevent your own destruction. So essentially, it's kind of like just being a better person, just so you can manipulate fate to be in your favor, right? And by practicing this, even the most evil beings can start to understand the fruits of their labor in terms of being a better person. Now, in order to actually become a Buddha, you have to not have that evil intent in you at all. The form of immortality that Sun Wukong achieved in Journey to the West is sort of a cheat in that sense. They even say this in the book through a taboo or abandon, or basically a form of immortality that is against the rules in terms of the universe, and that actually causes Sun Wukong to have to deal with calamities that will automatically be sent his way due to the fact that he is trying to achieve immortality in this way. And it's a very similar poetic thing to what's going on with Frieza right now, and you'll understand a bit more what I mean by that here in a few minutes. But Frieza is mastering the art of essentially manipulating situations in his favor to where he comes out on top. Now, another really interesting scene in this episode is essentially alluring to the fact that due to the fact that Frieza does not care about his universe even more than Sidra, that he's actually even more of a destroyer in that sense than Sidra. When Beerus finally does show up and saves Goku from the destruction energy that Frieza tried to put him in, Frieza says something very interesting. He says that with the fate of the universe at stake, this is the perfect opportunity for me to manipulate even the all-powerful gods. Now, if you remember in the Granola arc, they really like to play Elec up as this master manipulator, when in reality, Frieza was the master manipulator the entire time. And in the end, Elec failed and Frieza succeeded. Now, why is that? He even calls out Beerus specifically here, rather than Goku, suggesting that Beerus is actually a target of his in terms of someone to dethrone, because he is tired of living under his rule. What exactly does all this mean? Well, I think the thought process here is that Frieza has essentially figured out how to manipulate fate in his favor. He's essentially figured out how to try and manipulate reality. Very similar to Goku, but Goku is not consciously aware of his ability to do this. But I think that Frieza has figured out that if he emulates Goku and he tries to do things the way that Goku does, he can manipulate the universe in his favor to the point that he can create this perfect scenario where he can finally kill Goku. I think Frieza feels that he cannot actually destroy Goku until he is on the absolute top of the food chain. And they even allure to this in this episode because Frieza says that unlike Wukong, who ended up having to cast out bad thoughts and learn to clear his mind in terms of his character development, this is a direct acknowledgement and reference to, he focused on nothing but an endless series of combat simulations in which he killed Goku over and over again. So essentially what's happening here is they are pointing out to us that Frieza is essentially visualizing the perfect scenario for him to come out on top. Now, what does all of this have to do with the Dragon Balls? I said at the beginning of the video that I noticed that Frieza had a set of Dragon Balls in the Dragon Ball superhero film. Well, in the Namek saga, one of the underlying themes of the saga is determining who the Nameks want to use the Dragon Balls and who they don't. It's a very important plot point in the story. Now, Goku, who was established to be the type of character that the Namekians would want to use the Dragon Balls on Earth prior to the Namek saga, shows up, becomes a Super Saiyan, and not only, saves all the Namekians, but basically provides them with a planet that has been reborn. So essentially, Goku is the epitome of the type of person that the Namekians would let use the Dragon Balls if planet Namek was in danger, right? So then, when the Granola arc rolls around, the scene where Frieza shows up and he attains his Black Frieza form, he essentially wipes out Gas and Elec as a way to communicate to us narratively that Gas and Elec don't have the character traits that he has that allows him to be successful. And those character traits just so happen to be the same character traits that make Goku successful. Goku does not do things for revenge, and he also solves problems with his own power. So Frieza shows up and he does the same thing. And then, as he is leaving the planet, he emulates Super Saiyan Goku and acts exactly like him, and essentially, just basically rubs it in Goku and Vegeta's face that he surpassed them, and then leaves. Now, why is this so important? Because this is them essentially communicating to us below the surface that Frieza has figured out how to compose himself to be the type of person that he needs to be and manipulate reality in his favor until he can get into the position that he wants to be to dethrone Zeno and take over the entire multiverse. So essentially the idea is that Frieza is going to continue to behave the way that he is behaving now until he has put himself in a position that he can completely wipe out everyone that he needs to in order to be on the top of the food chain. Now, one of the coolest little scenes that I think allures to this in this episode is the part where Frieza is in the Hakai energy and then he reveals that he's been acting and that he actually isn't having any issue with the destruction energy at all. He's actually just acting. And I think that is very, very important because I think that that is a hint at the future events. I think that all of Frieza's training, everything that he's went through, which again is ridiculously similar to all the events that the Monkey King went through in Journey to the West, from being defeated and humiliated to going to hell to being reborn, having to think about his actions and using that to his advantage, to having to face a reflection of himself. All of these things are subtle hints at the character development that Frieza is going through. Frieza is going to be the most dangerous villain that Dragon Ball Super has ever conceived due to the simple fact that he has figured out how to emulate what makes Goku successful in the plot and what the plot actually rewards. And as long as he continues to emulate that, that means that if he does attain a set of Dragon Balls and he can continue to maintain himself in this way and emulate Goku, that means that he will not suffer the consequences in the same way as Elec or Gas. Despite all that, Frieza can also be put in a position, if he is put against the wall, to completely abandon this act, which may be where this is all going. Goku has been nothing but encouragement for Frieza to understand why Goku is successful, why he is such a great warrior, why he is a person who is revered in the universe and looked up to as a hero. Frieza finally understands, but he is so evil that he is not going to take it and use it to try to be a better person morally at all. He's just going to emulate it and use it to his advantage. And that's essentially what Frieza has achieved here in Black Frieza. The issue is, due to the fact that it is all, in fact, an act, due to the fact that it's essentially him cheating, in a sense, maintaining this mindset very similar to the Monkey King, he can do what he needs to go into heaven and dethrone all the gods. Again, the Monkey King. All of this stuff is essentially, what is happening with Frieza right now is he is essentially achieving Taoist immortality. He is achieving what he needs to exist amongst the ranks of the gods, because in Journey to the West, that is how Sun Wukong made his way to the ranks of the gods. He achieved the same form of the same mindset that they did, and then just emulated it and used it to go into heaven so that he could eventually dethrone heaven and take over everything. And that is essentially what they have decided to do with Frieza's character. And there are a lot of hints that suggest this. Now, what exactly Frieza will do with the Dragon Balls, I'm not exactly sure. I've actually pondered about this a lot. There are quite a few things he could do. He could try to become a destroyer, learn the language of the gods so that if he ever got his hands on the Super Dragon Balls, he could use those. But in terms of like the wish that he's worked out in his mind, I have no idea what it is. But I do think that there are a lot of hints that there is a huge wish from Frieza coming that is essentially going to carry him into the realm of the gods. So not only has he achieved the mindset that he needs, whatever wish he's going to use is going to put himself in the ranks of the destroyers so he can manipulate his ability to manipulate fate in his favor to the point that he can eventually dethrone Zeno. Now, this technique that they used, this Taoist immortality technique that the Monkey King used, is heavily referenced throughout Dragon Ball Super. You could also reference it through Ultra Instinct, through Ultra Ego, even through Super Saiyan Blue, because part of the requirement for Taoist immortality was to steal all of your chi into your body and not let any of it leak. So there are tons of references to this form of immortality, which essentially allows you to become a god at will. It allows you to achieve the level of godhood that you need to dwell amongst the gods. That is what Frieza has achieved here. So whatever is coming in terms of the future of Dragon Ball Super, it is going to have a lot to do with Frieza, and it is going to have a lot to do with the ranks of the gods of destruction. And we've gotten hints at this, even in Dragon Ball Super Superhero. And what I think is coming here is Frieza is going to get his hands on the Dragon Balls, and that's going to be all she wrote until he is eventually either destroyed by Vegeta or saved by Goku, and the choice is his. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.